G'day, Michael here. This video is about showing how basically the merits of these draw runners. Now, here you can see a couple of draw units, well actually 3 draw units. The one behind me is an island unit, a draw unit, obviously without any faces on it. But of course we're interested in seeing the structure and runners themselves, not actually how it looks as a finished cabinet. One of the biggest merits, well to me it's the biggest merit of these runners, is I can make a box size with great variations. I make the box to suit the job at hand, and that's because the runners allow me to do so. Other runner designs pretty much only let you make the depth you can see here on this cabinet, but these runners allow me to make, well you can see this drawer is actually deeper than a typical kitchen cabinet. This is a normal kitchen cabinet for a 2-foot or 600mm cabinet. And this drawer is actually bigger than the typical kitchen cabinet. So this is for a deeper environment. This is the longest I happen to have in stock right now. When you consider this is the typical height of a kitchen cabinet base cabinet, this runner is nearly the height of a typical kitchen cabinet. And it's actually deeper than this cabinet is deep front to back. And this is already larger than a typical kitchen cabinet. This is a normal kitchen cabinet. And you can see the runner's much deeper. I don't know how well it shows up. I'll turn that. There we go, you can see the runners are in fact much larger than the cabinet. What I'll do is I'll pop one of these out. The way they're designed, they've got like 2 moving stages plus the stage that's in the cabinet. Now, this is very large, so it's actually a bit over the top. You can see how massive these runners are. Very, very large. Don't even fit in the field of view here. Alright, I'll get a small set. And here's a little wee baby one. Okay, now, as you can see, the runners extend a long way relative to their close length. In fact, they extend fully. So when you pull a drawer out, they come actually clear of the cabinet. So you haven't got a certain amount captured inside the cupboard where you can't get to, but rather you've got it so the drawer comes clear. This is the thickness of a drawer front, and as you can see, the access to the drawer is still complete. There's no hidden portion of what's inside the drawer. So these drawers kind of give you about a quarter more of the drawer runners allow you to have sort of a quarter more drawer than many other designs have. And they have 2 different options for mounting. This one here, you can see these lugs. So now they're designed to be fitted to the underside of the drawer, whereas this is the very long ones that I just had a minute ago. Right? They're designed to be mounted from the side. So here's the component that mounts on the drawer, and as you can see it's got holes drilled through it. Whereas these bottom mounts have got those lugs you can screw to the underside of the drawer. Pop one of these drawers out. Now it's important to note that there's a little lug on the side here of these runners, and they are identical parts, but that means I have to lift this side up and the other side down. I have to push down so as to free the drawers to release it to come out. Okay, now that's released. You can probably see that. You can just see it in the video. There's a little bit of a tab thing here, and there's a lug that catches on a lug in the cabinet component. And here you can see the bottom mounting of the drawer runners. It's a little bit of a trick to get them lined up. Now the bearing cage that's in behind can be damaged if you're too far out of alignment. You can actually pick them up and damage them. I guess there are 2 weaknesses of these runners. One is the potential for you damaging it if you're clumsy and brutal on inserting the drawer. The other small disadvantage they have is the ball bearing cages over time, sometimes randomly, 1 in 20 runners, that cage creeps around in such a way that perhaps you can't pull the drawer out completely. It sort of stops, at a distance from being fully pulled out. All you need to do is carefully, firmly pull the drawer out to its full range, and that'll realign the bearings, and then you'll notice that the drawers run perfectly again. So that's kind of it. They are greased. They've got like a clear grease on them, and you've got to avoid like getting abrasive materials in it. But that's not only on these runners. Really, all drawer runners are best kept clean. If you do find you ended up spilling some salt on it, or dishwashing detergent, laundry detergent is probably one of the worst. Obviously, all you have to do is wipe that off and put some kind of grease on it. It wouldn't even matter if that was, well, any average car grease, any axle grease, it doesn't matter. If you can find something that's clear, obviously it's nicer, but it's not essential. You don't really make contact with the drawers runners anyway when you're in daily use. So that's really it. That's the sum total of the troubles. They are a little sensitive to precision, but that's, again, not uncommon. You're expecting something to slide nicely, so it has to have some precision. They're made for about 35 kilos, most of them. There are some heavier ones, but these particular ones are 35 kilos. Very hard to describe. They're called 4-in-1. You can see it's not the same as a Phillips bit. It's got a kind of a lump in the middle. It's got a bit more to it than a Phillips. Now here's a Phillips bit, by the, in the same comparison. Let's see if I turn. This is the best way I could think of, holding it all steady because my hands aren't steady enough. This is the type of bit I'm using with these screws. Don't know whether the recess shows up fairly well there, but this screw accommodates a Phillips screwdriver. It also accommodates the posi drive screwdriver. It also accommodates, of all things, a square drive. In fact, of the sort of regular off-the-shelf layout, of the off-the-shelf type bits, don't know whether that shows up in the recessing properly. Very hard to demonstrate this. But you can probably now recognise the square drive portion of the screw. It's quite impressive. But obviously, to fully occupy that space, they've made their own drill bit, their own screwdriver bit. So that is why I use this, and it holds the screw very, very firmly. That's the reason why I sell the screws I use. Okay. So if you need to buy these screws, and you also need to buy the bit, if you buy a box of the screws, which I'm not sure I've got up at the moment, if you buy a box of these screws, this screwdriver bit comes with the box. Otherwise, you have to buy it separately. Okay, so that's holding quite firmly, and that is why I use these sorts of screws. They are a hardened screw. They've got a very sharp, clean cutting thread. They've got a smooth countersink, so they pull parts together. This bit drives very, very solidly. If you do slip, you often get a second chance, whereas if you use Phillips, for a start, the drive area of a typical Phillips screw is very, very small, whereas the recess in these screws is actually quite large. As a result, the heads are a little larger too. But in any case, these screws can be driven by any one of these three bits, as well as the specifically made one. So they are a pretty useful screw to be using, and yeah, my favourite screws are these ones for woodwork generally. Okay, but with this being so solid without places, you can use it as a guide for centering. You don't necessarily need to have another tool to produce the center, if you're careful, right? I'll demonstrate a method for establishing a center. Actually, I might even demonstrate it right here. Let's do that. Now you can see a number of intersection points. If a screwdriver does not drive the bit accurately, let's grab the Phillips. It is difficult, and particularly on, say, laminate, it's difficult to get the screw to go exactly where we want it to, especially if your second hand is trying to hold another part, like the drawer runner. You might want to be placing the drawer runner. So as you can see, I've got no mechanism of placing that screw with this bit. Okay. With the 4-in-1 holding it firmly, I can have the other hand free and place it as best I can. And there we have it, quite well centered. As you saw, that was quite easy. If you need to get the centering located very carefully, an alternative method is to use what's called a brad awl. Let's give it a dag on the end. Okay. So you can choose where the hole centering is going to be. And as you can see, that's quite accurate. So then our Phillips screwdriver can... Now, a Phillips screwdriver, there's no trouble, of course, driving the screw in. So you can see the centering works quite well that way. A temptation is to use a drill bit, but drill bits have a problem in that they tend to jump around from where you start them. I do my best to start that, certainly one-handed. Well, you can see that's a little bit off. It's not bad, but it's not exactly where I wanted it to do. It's not exactly where I wanted it put. The screwdriver, the 4-in-1 screwdriver, gave me a better placement, as did the brad awl. So a drill is not an attractive tool for placing a screw accurately in where you want it placed. I'm using the brad awl to create a centering for the next hole. Might show better if I do that. Yes. Okay, so I'm doing the centering best I can. And with that method I can use the Phillips screwdriver to drive it in. And you can see the torque clutch has done its job. It's important detail. Okay, but of course I'm actually using the 4-in-1 bit, so I can demonstrate the ease at which we can center the screws. Now this is a fair reach in, it's a little bit harder at this length. And as you can see, that went in beautifully. Put it in a higher speed, as I can. Now you can opt for pre-drilling these holes. That's another way of doing this, but I've chosen to use a template because it actually guides the placement of the runner nicely. So this template is measuring from the bottom of the cabinet to the placement of the runner. And what I haven't showed yet is the other width. Now, like I said, if you're having trouble with precision, use the brad awl, which basically amounts to some sort of spike to start a hole. I've done this a lot, so I tend not to need that process. So again, I'll show the brad awl just so it's done again. And this is using the Phillips screwdriver bit, so shows the flexibility of these screws. Okay, and there's one more screw hole hidden in here. I'll do that now. Spread all again. These runners are a little bit sensitive to precision or inaccuracy, which way you look at it. Okay, so that runner's well mounted, and the last runner simply goes at the bottom of the cabinet. Use a brad awl. I recommend, if you haven't done this before, use a brad awl, something that'll give you that centering that's accurate. If you've used the cordless drill a lot and you're quite fluent, you may be quite happy to start the way I do normally. There he is. Okay. So the process gets repeated for all of those. Well, that's it for this video. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, ask a question, leave a comment. Bye for now.